So welcome back to our series of videos on quantitative innovation research. In video number 6 now, I would like to introduce you to 3 exercises that I ask you to prepare at home and that we will then discuss together in the classroom in greater detail. And we do that as part of our kick-off session. And these 3 exercises will be of a distinct nature. The first exercise essentially asks you to replicate the conceptual and measurement model of an existing CAS study. The second exercise is meant to allow you to practice how to set up your own research design. That is, I will give you a research question and you will give me the conceptual model and you will give me the measurement model based on the Mannheim Innovation Panel questionnaire. And then the third exercise asks you to come up with the appropriate estimation strategy. That is, I tell you what your dependent variable looks like, and you tell me what estimator you would choose. So these are our three exercises at a fairly high level, and we will now simply look at these in turn. I'll introduce you to them, you'll work on them at home in preparation for our kickoff session, and then we'll discuss and refine them as part of our kickoff session. So the first is about replicating an established study. And the study we pick is one from our list. So we look at the paper by Lawson and Salter, published in 2006 in the Strategic Management Journal. And this is one of the first empirical studies showing that open innovation actually enhances the innovative performance of the firm. And you will be asked to read this study in preparation for the subsequent exercises. It's a highly influential paper. It's a paper that has been cited almost 3,000 times. So let's now introduce the first exercise. So I assume that you've read the Lawson and Salter 2006 paper. And the objective is to help you and to allow you to practice how to understand and reproduce the conceptual model and the measurement model as it was used in Lawson and Salter 2006. So what you should do now is ideally you put your copy of Lawson and Salter next to your table when you work on this exercise. So your exercise has 2 parts. In part 1, you should go through the paper and identify the key constructs. So what are the key constructs or concepts that are part of the hypothesis? So it's about openness, right? It's about the innovative performance of firms. It's about research and development. So identify the key concepts and write them down. And then draw the conceptual model. Identify the dependent variable, identify the independent variables, identify potential moderating or mediating variables, and then draw your conceptual model in as clear a fashion as somewhat possible. That's what you should do with regards to the conceptual model. And once you've developed your conceptual model, please prepare the measurement model as used in Lawson and Salter. So identify the measures for each of the key constructs. If you say that openness is a key construct, then how did they measure openness precisely? Find the question they used. Find the corresponding question in the German questionnaire. So this is really what you should do as part of exercise 1. Develop the conceptual model as used in Lawson and Salter and describe the measurement model. And once you've done that, you've been able to replicate key parts of one of the most successful innovation studies using community innovation data. So reproduction is the first step. Then we move from reproduction to you designing a new conceptual model and you coming up with your own measurement model. That already moves you closer to your task in this course. So the objective now is, as I said, to come up with your own conceptual model and measurement model, and for a question that I provide you with. So what we want to understand now is not whether openness, that is interacting with others, leads to superior innovative performance, which was the story by Lawson and Salter, but we would like to understand now what determines whether firms engage with others and partner with others in the innovation process in the first place. So it's a story about the antecedents of open innovation. So what is it that determines whether one company works with more external actors than another? So what I want you now to do is, in a first step, to develop a conceptual model. So what could be possible anteceding factors? What could be factors here that determine whether a company is more open in its innovation activities or less open? And these are all candidates to be put here and to be listed here as antecedents. And once you've identified these antecedents, that should ideally be part of the Mannheim Innovation Panel data, then you write them down and draw your conceptual model. In the next step, also still as part of part 1, I ask you to think about possible confounding factors. What else is there that could affect open innovation? What else is there that could potentially affect both open innovation and your key independent variable? What are possible confounding factors that you want to somehow exclude as part of your estimation procedure? So think about these control variables and also list them. So your conceptual model should then contain your focal variables of interest and your control variables. And then you turn to the measurement model and you take out the questionnaire for the Mannheim Innovation Panel and you tell me exactly how you plan to measure your key constructs that you put into these boxes. So how do you measure openness? How do you measure your key antecedents? What specific questions do you use and how do you construct your measure? And then at the end of this exercise, you tell me what the appropriate estimation strategy is, what the appropriate estimator is to use to test the hypotheses that jointly form your conceptual model. And the choice of estimator will depend, as you know, on the properties and the distribution in particular of your dependent variable, that is here on search openness. So look at the characteristics of your dependent variable to then determine the most appropriate estimator. So exercise 1 was about replicating. This is about designing. You come up with your conceptual model and your measurement model for this particular research question. And this exercise is already very similar to your own task in this course, where you need to come up also with your own research question, then your own conceptual model and your own measurement model. But this, I think, is a very good starting point to think about how to develop research questions and conceptual models and measurement models in particular. Exercise 3 now is more technical in nature and has as its key purpose the reactivation of some of your knowledge from your statistics and econometric courses. So the key task here is to basically link different types of dependent variables to their appropriate estimation techniques. And the first part of this exercise simply pertains to that linkage, while the second pertains to how we can test moderation effects. So let's first of all look at different types of dependent variables, and I invite you now at home in preparation for our kickoff session to review your textbooks of statistics and your lecture notes to find out what type of estimator would be most appropriate to estimate variance in these possible dependent variables. So we've got a set of dependent variables listed here, and they've got different distributional properties. The first is return on sales, and return on sales has no predefined range. Tell me what kind of estimator you would use to estimate variance and explain variance in this type of dependent variable. Then we have the revenue share from products that are new to the market. And that will obviously range from 0 to 100 because it's in percent, right? The revenue share can be anywhere between 0 and 100%. The third dependent variable is a binary dependent variable. And it simply asks whether the focal organization is a member of an innovation corporation or not. So it's a 0-1 variable you want to explain. And my question to you here is, what type of estimator would you use for a binary variable? What are the options? And which one would you consider to be adequate here? The fourth dependent variable, it's a count variable. And here at stake is the number of distinct knowledge sources the organization draws upon. And let's assume that this can be anywhere between 0 external knowledge sources that inform the innovation process to 9 distinct knowledge sources. So you're counting the knowledge sources from 1 to 9. There can only be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or 9 distinct knowledge sources. And then we have a variable which is yet again different in terms of its scale and which asks for the salience of adequate innovation funding as a barrier to innovation. This variable has only takes only 3 distinct variables, namely this barrier can be low, it can be medium, or it can be high. What type of model, or estimator rather, would you use for this particular variable? So, please write down these different estimators and their distributional properties, then look at your textbooks and tell me what kind of estimation technique you would use. Think about ordinary least squares, logistic regressions, Tobit regressions, count data models, and so forth, and link them to these dependent variables. That is, I think, the most advanced exercise in technical terms, and then building upon that we'll be looking at how we can test for moderation. So let's assume now that we have a moderation hypothesis, which in an ideal typical manner is depicted like this, right? So this is our moderation setup, and our moderation hypothesis now reads like this. Search openness will be more strongly related with innovative performance when firms' R&D intensity is high. So let's use that model and let's now write down the respective variables, at least in their abbreviations. So what is our dependent variable? Our dependent variable is what we want to explain. It's the innovative performance. So this variable is the innovative performance. Our independent variable, the variable that explains variance in innovative performance, is search openness, right? So this is our dependent variable. This is our independent variable. So here we write down search openness. And then we have our moderator, which is R&D. So R&D is our moderator. And the relationship is such that the positive effect between search openness and innovative performance gets stronger the higher the research and development intensity of the focal organization. So this is also a positive reinforcing moderating effect. So this is the hypothesis. Now the more difficult question is, how do we test for it? Maybe you've learned in your statistics or econometric courses how to test for moderation. If not, then look it up, Google, do whatever, watch YouTube videos, but tell me in the classroom session how you would test for moderation, how you would test in the computer lab a moderating model such as this. That's something I would like to discuss with you. So the idea here was to simply introduce you to these exercises and to ask you to go through them and prepare them prior to coming to our kickoff session. And in the kickoff session, we will then discuss them, elaborate upon them, and work towards a solution together. So please take that seriously, because that will determine to a large extent what we can take out all as part of this class from our kickoff session. Many thanks, and please stay with me now for a few pieces of advice on how you can structure your argument, how you can do your writing, and what kind of tools you could use to manage academic references. Many thanks.